Unit 12, Part 4. So we've got our 4 types of categorical proposition. Universal inclusion, example, all Australians are surfers. That's the A from the firma. Universal inclusion. Particular inclusion, example, some Australians are surfers. Call that the I, particular inclusion. It's inclusion, so it's from the word affirmo. It's particular, so it's the second letter. Third one, universal exclusion is the form. Example, no Australians are surfers. E from the word nego. Universal exclusion is E. Particular exclusion, some Australians are not surfers. Particular exclusion is the O. Okay, we're now going to give Venn diagrams of these propositions, okay, and then from those Venn diagrams, read off from the Venn diagrams the logical form of each of these sentences. And that's really the crucial thing we're working towards, right? That logical form is really what you need to take home, what you need to take with you going into the unit 13, 14, 15, right? Because you need to symbolize English sentences, English categorical sentences, and the logical form is the way you'll be symbolizing them. So that's what we're heading to, but that's the most important bit. As Klenk stresses, so now we're going to give Venn diagrams of these propositions. We're diagramming propositions, not sets, even though sets are involved, as she says in the section, page 230. Right. One word of caution. You may have learned a type of diagramming for sets elsewhere, which also went under the name Venn diagrams. This is something different. We are diagramming here propositions, not sets, although sets are involved. So it's important you read the instructions properly. Okay. But we're diagramming propositions, right? So these are diagrams which present you with the logical form, in some sense, of these propositions, right? Not just a relation between sets, although sets are involved. Okay. In each case here, so these are the Venn diagrams for examples, right? In each of these examples, the same subject class and predicate class is involved. Each of these 4 propositions over here, each of these 4 categoricals over there, asserts a relation between Australians and surfers, or asserts a relation between the class of Australians and the class of surfers, right? Each categorical asserts a different kind of relation. What are these different kinds? We just went through them. Universal inclusion, particular inclusion, universal and particular exclusion. E and O. Okay, so these Venn diagrams, the 2 circles are the subject class and the predicate class, which can be thought of as sets. Klenk has a small section on before this one on individuals, sets, and properties. I'm not going to say anything about it. It's pretty straightforward. But okay, this is the subject and predicate class. So this is the class in this section here, right? In each case, the same subject and predicate. Australians, surfers. Let me reiterate what I said before. Her warning about specifying the predicate class properly. Right, bottom of 231. Label the 2 circles when you're giving an analysis, being sure that you have the appropriate class terms for subject and predicate. It's the bottom 231. In the sentence, some automobiles use diesel fuel, for example, it would not do to label the predicate circle diesel fuel. The proper term is things that use diesel fuel. So, as you saw me in the last part 3, I was always saying, and give you those, was it part 2 when we were running through exercise 1, predicate class was always things that, and then the predicate. Okay, so it's things that, because it's a class, right? It's a subject, it's itself a class. The predicate class is a class, so it's a class of things. So you have to say, what is gathered here in some automobiles use diesel fuel? What are the 2 classes I'm stating some kind of relation between? Automobiles, subject class, predicate class, things that use diesel fuel, right? Otherwise you don't have a class if you just say diesel fuel. Diesel fuel isn't a class, right? Things that use diesel fuel, that's a class, right? Okay, so explanation of the diagrams. when you have these lines, okay, so this section is the section of things that are Australian. Yeah, what goes here, if any individuals goes here, what is a set? It's a collection of individuals, right? Any individuals in this section are in the section, these things are Australians and not surfers, right? Because they're included in the class of Australians, but excluded from the class of surfers, which is this one, okay? In the middle here, what have we got? The middle section is the class of things which are both Australian and surfers. If there is an individual in this middle section, that individual is both Australian and a surfer, because it's included in the Australians, it is included amongst the Australians, included in the set of Australians, and it's included in the set of surfers. Okay, and that's really it, that's all we care about. If you had something here, it'd be a surfer that wasn't Australian, but since the subject class is Australian, we're not going to have anything there. Okay, because it's a relation between the subject and the predicate. Starting with the subject. Okay, we've got X's and we've got shaded areas. We shade an area to indicate that there is nothing in that area. Okay, so if an area is shaded, it means that area is empty, or there are no individuals in that area. Okay, an X means that think of the X as an individual. If there is an X in an area, it means there is at least one individual member of the set or sets. If there's an X in an area, it means there is an individual in that area, right? So this is going to mean that there exists at least one which is both Australian and a surfer, okay? And this is going to mean there is at least one which is an Australian and is not a surfer, okay? So these are Venn diagrams of our various propositions. You see these four all differ, and they're all going to be they're all different, and each one is going to be a diagram of one of the sentences. So the A form, start with that. All Australians are surfers. Sorry, no, I'm cutting off the end of it there. All Australians are surfers. The A form, it's the universal inclusion, and universal inclusion is going to look like this, right? You're saying all of the subject class is included in the predicate class, all of them. That is to say that this section is empty, right? You're saying that there are none amongst the things that are in the subject class that are not also amongst the predicate class. All of the things in the subject class are included within the predicate class. So if you're in the subject class, you're also in the predicate class. All the Australians fit into this section, right? That's what this means. This is empty. Importantly, it's going to be if there are any Australians, they're going to be in this section, because to anticipate, as Klenk stresses, the two universal ones, all Australian, the A and the E, are not going to assert the existence of anything, not even any Australians. I'll get back to the lesson, but it's only the I and the O that are going to assert the existence of something. Anyway, so all Australians are surfers. We represent that by saying this section is empty, right? There are no Australians who are excluded from the class of surfers. Or in general, there are none amongst the subject class that are excluded from the predicate class. So there are none in this section, because this is the section of things that are in the subject class that are excluded from the predicate class. Easy. Okay? Secondly, I form, particular inclusion. Some Australians are surfers. Okay? What am I saying when I am saying that? Right? What is the correct sort of Venn diagram for this? Working towards a logical form. Some Australians are surfers. There are some amongst the subject class that are also included in the predicate class. There exists at least one, remember, from Unit 11, our basic logical meaning of the existential quantifier is there is at least one, right? And we even translate things like almost all Australians are surfers, or most Australians are surfers. Since it falls short of all, and since we're only using two universal quantifiers, that would just get the existential quantifier, even though it just means at least one. Right? So most Australians are surfers would get their existent X such that X is Australian and X is a surfer. Losing some of the meaning, but that's how we do it. But anyway, so some Australians are surfers. There are some in the subject class that are included in the predicate class. There is at least one here, right? So an X in that section, right? And this is going to be asserting existence, as we'll see. This is going to get the existential quantifier. No Australians are surfers. That's an example of universal exclusion. Okay, what is a Venn diagram for universal exclusion? What am I saying when I say that all of the subject class is excluded from the predicate class? No A's are B's. I have A's and B's as my subject and predicate. I'm saying that this section is empty, right? There are none in here, right? No Australians are surfers means if there are any Australians, right, you're not going to find any there. If no Australians are surfers, none amongst the Australians are included amongst the surfers. So any Australians go in here. If there are any Australians, they'll be in this section. Remember, shading indicates non-existence. Shading indicates that this section is empty. So if there are any Australians at all that exist, they're going to be found in this section, amongst the things which are both Australian and not surfers. Alright, so that's empty. There's no Australians are surfers. Finally, some Australians are not surfers is our example of particular exclusion. Particular exclusion. So some Australians are not surfers. I'm saying there is at least one amongst those that are Australians but are not surfers. When I say some Australians are surfers, I'm saying there exists at least one. Exactly what I said. There exists at least one that is an Australian but is excluded from the class of surfers. So at least one in this section. Okay? So you should be able to do that. You should be able to make that transition from, these are example sentences, but you've got to do it with your own categoricals. Do some Venn diagrams from the exercises of other examples, right? But now we'll go from the Venn diagram to the logical form, right? The big crux of the chapter, right? The logical form of each of these statements. We'll be reading it off the Venn diagram.